My name is Justin Bibb. I'm a JD MBA student here at Case Western Reserve University. And today I have the distinct pleasure to introduce my dear friend and mentor, Gallup Chairman and CEO, Jim Clifton. So as CEO of Gallup, Jim is known for being a global leader at the forefront of how our country addresses issues of job creation, education, and entrepreneurship. But for Jim, these issues are bigger than just topics of interest for Gallup. They're his life mission. I met Jim almost 10 years ago when I was studying in Washington, D.C. at American University. He was giving a speech on leadership, and afterwards we met, and I told him about my desire to be a social entrepreneur in my hometown of Cleveland. Now, as a bright-eyed sophomore in college, growing up in a tough neighborhood in Cleveland, I had no clue what a social entrepreneur was. But I knew that I wanted to change the conditions around me. But for the last 10 years, every step of the way, Jim has bestowed his wisdom, support, and mentorship to help me realize my own dreams. So whether it's guiding a CEO of a tech startup in Silicon Valley or helping a kid from Cleveland realize his own potential, now more than ever, America's entrepreneurial future depends on this type of intentional commitment to identifying and mentoring those among us who have yet to realize their own ambitions. So without further ado, I welcome to the stage Chairman and CEO of Gallup, Jim Clifton.
Well, it's good to be with you. Thank you very much for having me be a part of your program here. It's great to be on campus. Case Western has such a gorgeous campus. It's fun to, Justin walked me around a little bit, and I love being here. My dad taught school at the University of Nebraska for 20 years. We lived right by the Lincoln campus, and I used to run over and spend a lot of time there. I'm a Cornhusker. By the way, if you're a Cornhusker, I don't know if you know this, people call this Midwest. When you're from Nebraska, we don't call this Midwest. We call you more East. But in the Midwest, when you're from Nebraska, your whole year depends just upon one day, which is Thanksgiving. You know why? It's not because we had lunch with Indians or whatever. That's the day we played Oklahoma. And then if you beat Oklahoma, life was good. We didn't care about corn prices, cattle prices, just whether or not you beat, and if you lost, you're miserable for the whole year. That was life in Nebraska. But there's a story that followed me on the East Coast. I live in D.C. I lived there for quite a while now, but it's not a joke. It's a story. Maybe you might know it. Thank you for not telling it, Justin. But we were playing Oklahoma. So ABC's in town. And the reporter's interviewing a Nebraska running back. And Nebraska and Oklahoma back then were always number 1 and 2. He'd ruin the other person's season and all that. But anyway, I'm not going to say the running back's name because if you're my age, you will have heard of him. But the reporter, he's sitting in a chair and he's got a white helmet with a red stripe and there's just a block N on the side. That's what a Nebraska helmet looks like. And she says his name and she says to him, "If the N on your helmet didn't stand for Nebraska, what would it stand for?" He thought and he thought. He wanted to hit this one clear out of the park. Finally he said, "I'd have to say knowledge." The only reason I was telling you that is because I went to that same school, and I'm not 100% sure how you spell the word myself, but let me make a few remarks about innovation that only somebody that sells innovation can say. I'm concerned that we have the wrong expectations. Maybe we don't quite have innovation figured out, that the role that it plays in the next maybe 25 to 50 to 100 years in our country. I put a team of researchers at Gallup, and I said, I want you to just tell me what's the truth about the economy, because I don't trust the White House, and I certainly don't trust Wall Street on what the current state is. You know why? Because they both tell me that the economy's now turned the corner. You know why I have a problem with that? Because the White House is a special interest group. No matter who's there, so I'm not picking on the president, no matter who's there, they always tell us the economy's doing great because they want us to be behind them. They always tell us that unemployment's the best it's ever been, or it's getting better and all that, because they want us to be behind there. We want to vote for them. Then you go to the right-hand side, and you get to Wall Street, and you know what? If you watch Squawk Box, it's every morning they tell me that the economy's turned around. That's because they want you to keep you in the market. They tell you that unemployment at 5.1, 2, or 3, whatever it is the best it's ever been. Well, if you put a little linear regression to the GDP growth since the meltdown, it's at exactly 2.0 with a slight downward trend. I needed to know that because that means what you're telling me is exactly upside down. Another thing I needed to know is that when you have a recession, you literally always get, over 150 years, that's when we really first started measuring it, you always get a big bounce. So we didn't get the bounce. I needed to know that too. So we've just been grinding along like this. Here's another thing. I didn't know this. I kind of follow this. But GDP is sort of the, it's the sales and production. So if we were a company, the sales of the United States would be about $17 trillion, and we have about 100 million full-time employees. Maybe about another 30 million part-time. But the growth of that number is of critical importance because we have new people coming in, and you also have inflation. What the analysts taught me was that 2.5 is break even. If you're at 2.0, we are losing money. So as a company, America Inc., we're absolutely going broke when we're at 2.0. I needed to know that. You need to be at 2.5. I had another question. I said, what number really works? Do you know? For GDP, what number really works? So if you go back over the last 150 to 180 years, our economy has grown to 17 trillion. It's about 25% of the whole world's GDP. We have absolutely dominated the world economically up until recently. Now it's fading. I wanted to know what was the percent of GDP growth over time series that causes us to dominate the world. You know what the answer is? 3.75%. It's not 10%, it's not 12%. If you can have 3.75%, as Americans, if we can have 3.75% growth over 5, 10, 20 years, we just crush the world. I'm a capitalist. In my opinion, if you want to dominate the world, dominate it economically. Military doesn't work as well. I love military. I'm always up for bombing or whatever. It just doesn't work it just doesn't work very well. But you see the difference between 2 and 3.75? It's so important. Where we are right now, we're going broke. We can't feed any of the, obviously our debt continues to grow and we've got so many other expenses, everything. It doesn't work. But winning's only about that much higher. Unemployment, 5.3, you know how that works. And that is that if Justin and I are both out of work, remember it's done by a survey, Department of Labor, BLS, and they ask him, did you apply for work in the last 4 weeks? And he says, I did. Then he's in the workforce. And if there's nothing I want more than a job, but I didn't look in the last 4 weeks, I'm not counted in the size of the job force. Everybody's real smart here, they know that. And that percent of the adult population is the lowest it's been in 40 years. We've quit working. Why don't you tell me that? Why do I get the news? Why do I get the news that the unemployment's turned the corner and it's so good, it's the best it's been and all of that? I need to, if it's the worst it's been, I need to know that. Here's a good question. When we ask a question Dr. Gallup called it the will of the world. What do Americans want more than anything? It used to be peace, independence, have a family and all that. It's changed to having a good job. So if you and I are just walking down the street in Kansas City or somewhere and you say, what are these people thinking, Jim, does the Gallup? Yeah, they're thinking they wish they had a really good job where when they went to work and they did something, it was important and meaningful, because in the whole new world, if that job's not meaningful, it means their life isn't meaningful. So it's a very, very, very important number. A full-time job is 35 hours, this is the way the government defines it, 35 hours a week with a paycheck for an organization. So you say, well, forget about the size of the workplace and all that. You say, what percent of American adults have that great American dream of 35 hours a week with a paycheck for an organization? The answer is 44%, which is the lowest it's been in 40 years. So you can just take that information. You can take what Squawk Box and Wall Street and White House, you can do that one. If you do that one, the problem with that premise is you go and create strategies that don't work because your premises are wrong. But if you take the other one that says we've ground to a halt, we got fewer full-time jobs, and guess what? That's where the middle class, that's where we lose the middle class. Because the real good jobs are 55 to 85,000, that's how they describe middle class, just keeps getting smaller and smaller because the good jobs just keep going away. I'm just throwing this out there. So we said, gee, we need to fix that. What should we do? We've bet this country, as we were talking about this experiment, started in 1776, on innovation. I'm just asking, is anybody at this conference saying, is there a chance we're wrong? Somebody should. I was watching TV about 35 years ago, and it's a long time ago. Justin, you weren't around then. But I watched something that just really shocked me. They had a little panel of economists, probably might have been in black and white. But anyway, they were talking about, they said, where will America be in 30 years? So we're kind of there now, give or take 5 years. The economists weren't right-leaning or left-leaning, but it just blew me away as a, so I'd say I'd have been probably 30 years old, but they said, here's what's going to happen. Japan's and Germany's GDP are both going to pass America's, the United States, and America will fall to third because of inferior production. And they made predictions. They said that Japan would go to about 5 trillion. So that's about now. It's actually about 5 years ago. And they said that Germany would go to about 3.5 to 3.75 trillion, and that America would come in at about 3 to 3.5 trillion. That'd be sort of now, do you see? But think about how spectacularly wrong those economists were. It seems like they should be fined, or at least tried. We should try those people. But what, can you imagine what the United States, but then how do they just go, and now we're going to break for a commercial? No, 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 no. This is bigger than when Japan bombed us and we had to go fight. If Germany and Japan are to come back and beat us in the war of economics, we got a hell of a lot bigger problem than Hitler and the rising sun. So, how'd it come out? They nailed Japan. Japan's about 5 trillion. They nailed Germany. Germany's, I don't know, 3.5 or 3.75. United States of America bowed clear up to 17 trillion. You talk about a miss. But I was just going to ask if there are any nerds in the audience. I got a feeling there's a lot of them out here. But I love nerdy days because nobody in their right mind would do this, but I went back over that history of the predicted 30-year outcome by those well-meaning American economists, and then I took the actual, and I added the stubs of the difference between what we did compared to where we were supposed to be. The difference is 100 trillion. I live in Washington. I don't know. I don't even know what a big number is anymore when you live in Washington. I was in a meeting, it was in my boardroom. I don't know what some people were in there. They're from the government. I'm not picking on government, but somebody said, well, it's $50 billion, and I think it's the military. But anyway, I said, no, wait a minute. I said, you said 50 billion. Are we talking billion or million? And everybody around the table went, now, wait a minute. Are we thinking? I thought, boy, this is a big problem. If we're wondering if we're talking billions or millions, we got. But anyway, just trust me, 100 trillion, that's got to be a big number. But if you said, how do just 300 million, a little more than that, Americans out-achieve the world like we have? Outer space, technology. I mean, our university system just wipes out the entire rest of the world. Medicine, we spend twice as much per person as comparable, good countries, Canada and Germany and France and all that. But we beat the whole world in everything. You want to know why? $100 trillion really helps. We were talking in a meeting about my assistant's dad. You know James Van Allen, the Van Allen belt, the magnetic particles in low orbit around the. Anyway, he also got Pioneer 10 out, 8.4 billion miles and all that. But he died a while ago, but he came over to see his daughter, and I was having dinner with him. But I was just thinking, how'd you put it out there? And he told me, because 8.4 billion miles, 100 times farther than the sun. And he was telling me, I couldn't follow him. But what I was thinking is, who the hell came up with the money to make this stuff for us to have a satellite out 8.4 billion miles and space stations? Well, there's that 100 trillion. But you see, life changes in the United States of America if we don't outperform the world. And that's just sort of stopped. But see, what we're doing right now is we're saying, and that's arguably maybe the greatest run in the history of human development. The word exceptional I keep trying not to say that because it got politicized, but it must be the most exceptional 30 years in the history of humankind for human development. I mean, the only good thing about being old like I am is you can't believe what's happened with technology and all of those kind of things from where we were. I was using quarters and payphones and all of that. Dimes, sorry, okay. And he got another 60-something there. But what we've done is we've looked back at that time and we've said, that is unbelievable. Whatever happened back then, we need to open a can of that up right now and get that going again to put America back on track so she can dominate the world economically and we can have business partners and the whole world will work better. So we all did our analysis. And we said it's innovation. My team said not so fast. If you follow innovation around, monitor it, it has absolutely no value whatsoever until it has a customer standing next to it. You'd think you and I would know that, but apparently we don't. Because what we do is we spend tens of billions and billions and billions of dollars on innovation. We say, well, we're trying to fix Memphis or Detroit or trying to juice Cleveland. So what do we need to put billions and billions and billions into innovation. Then we look and we say, are there new companies coming up out of there? Are there new jobs, new middle-class jobs coming out of there? Not yet, Harvey. Well, then we better put in billions and billions and billions. We bet everything we have. But I'm just asking you, what if we're dead wrong? So I'm sitting at my desk in, oh, thank you. I'm sitting at my desk in Washington, and the phone rings, and it's this lady that runs the Council on Competitiveness. Do you know that thing? Real killer dynamite lady. She's got a lot on me. I mean, nothing personal. I mean, so I'm from Washington, I should say that. Nothing personal. But she says, hey, I need you over at the Academy of Sciences building on Constitution Avenue. She goes, I need you to give a speech. And I said, what time? She goes, 11:30. And I said, what day? And she goes, today. And I said, well, did somebody cancel or what are you doing? And I said, I'll come on. And she said, we have the heads of American laboratories there. And I know a few of them, but so it's, you know, NIH and CDC and NASA and all, and it's a pretty small group. So I don't know if there's even 30 of them. And when you have the heads of those laboratories, you have unbelievably good people. Great Americans, great leaders and all of that. But it was an innovation thing. And I said, what do you want me to talk about? And she said, I want you to tell them that you think innovation has the wrong expectation. I said, isn't that kind of the wrong group to talk to about that? And she says, no, but they need to hear it. So I said, listen, before you guys throw tomatoes and everything, I said, how many of you have inventions in your laboratories right now that just need business models, business builders, and customers? God is my witness, every hand went up. That's almost your poll right there. One guy, and I still can't remember, I asked Deborah, the lady, the CEO that runs that association, but anyway, I think it was the guy from NASA, but he said, I, honest to God, have a invention that's bigger than the internet. He said, it just needs to, you see, so what's the value? You got the invention, but then you got this other thing over here that's called a business model, an entrepreneur, or else you don't get the explosion you need. You know Vint Cerf? You got that one? Yeah, of course, the father of the internet. He got packets to fly across fiber optics, and the rest is history, and changed everybody's life in the whole world. I'm going to tell you a story that he's given me permission to tell because it's not very flattering to Vint. But at dinner, Vint's here, wife's here. So he invented this thing in the Defense Department, right, at DARPA. Started at UCLA. He got a lot of his big breakthroughs with Bob Kahn at UCLA. And oh my, Vint is such a wonderful guy. But the innocence of how he told this story, but so he's there, and there's a U.S. senator that loves, I'm going to try to speed this up, there's a U.S. senator that loves technology, comes over, he'd heard about it, sits down with Vint, with Dr. Cerf, and says, show me what you have here. So Vint has this thing set up on the event of war. We can send signals all over. No American would ever have guessed we had technology that advanced. And this senator goes, oh my gosh, this is incredible. He goes, do you mind if I go back to the Senate, pass a bill, pass an act, and we'll throw it out to Commerce and see what they can do with it? This is the part that you got to get. I mean, Vint Cerf, one of the greatest inventors. I mean, Thomas Edison and a light bulb. I mean, looks like the invention of the swizzle stick next to this. But anyway, he says, Vint Cerf says, or the senator says, can I pass an act? Vint says to him, fine with me, but I don't see what use business will have for it. Was it Graham Bell that said, Watson, come here, I need you? That's a good one. But the one, fine with me, but I don't see what use business will have for it. You know the senator? It is, yeah, it's Al Gore. I don't like him any better than you do. I'm the only person in the world that tells a nice story about him. What if Al Gore hadn't gone over there? I mean, one of the most spectacular pieces of innovation. I don't know, is it the wheel, or I don't know what it would be. Yeah. So throw it out, world changes, but it also explains $100 trillion of information, or of economics and GDP, and not only changed the very fabric of the American community, but it changed the fabric of the whole world. I want to give you one other example too, that it doesn't have to be high tech. You ever heard of Wayne Huizenga? You got him? Of course, I'm in Ohio. So Wayne's a garbage, you're not supposed to say garbage man. What? Waste management. But he didn't do that yet. He has a truck, picks up. But imagine that this is a shareholders conference, and I'm representing Wayne, and I say, the man's got a garbage trash hauling truck, and he wants to get 5 more of them and start do you want some of that action? That sounds like a hell of a thing to you? There's some innovation. He's going to get, seems to me like trash is getting picked up pretty well now. I don't need that. But he built Waste Management, one of the best run companies, great investment over the years, led the world in green breakthroughs. And he's just a trash collector. But what's the point? The point is God made that guy differently. But he built a Fortune 500 company in one lifetime. Very few people have done that. The next one, I actually helped him with the research on it. You know what the second one was? No, almost what? Yeah. So anyway, he says, Jim, I got an idea. He goes, if you know him, I'm doing an imitation of him. If you don't, this is totally meaningless. But he goes, I got an idea about renting tapes in strip malls. Can you do some research on that for me? I thought, yeah, I'll do it for you, but I can already tell you it's a bad idea. But it's not a bad idea. It's just not that great of an idea. So now you have kind of the inverse. You've got one of the great entrepreneurs in the history of mankind right here, and he's had now 2 bad ideas, 2 ideas that aren't that good. Blockbuster was his second Fortune 500 company. He did something that nobody's done. That guy, whatever God put in him, he built 2 Fortune 500 companies in one lifetime. Then he went on to build, was it AutoNation? Maybe AutoNation. Well, one of them, CarMax, is it? Okay. Well, that was his 3rd Fortune 500 company. There's a bit of a problem in that we have institutionalized and systematically created an institution of intellectual development that's second to none in the world. So if you have a kid that has high IQ, no kid with high IQ in this country is left behind. You get your chance. Now maybe you don't work very hard or whatever else, because all that testing works. So if you're and I'm doing IQ, not entrepreneurship, I'm doing innovation. So if we find you in the South Central Los Angeles and you test well, somebody will get you on their way to UCLA and then maybe on to Stanford for graduate school, or maybe MIT, and then you're on your way to Nassau, and boy, we are donuts at that. See how systematic that is? And that's why we lead the whole world. We've invented everything. Just go get an almanac. You can go back 200 years and see all the inventions. Then it says American, German, and all that. God, we get them all. We get all the good ones, too. That works. But you see, we as a society or a civilization of people, that's what we know. So when we get in trouble like we are now, is it hammer and a nail? I get them mixed up. But so we're a hammer and everything's a nail. So we go right back to innovation. There's a bit of a problem, though, because what we need right now are all those fire starters, and that's not intentional. We leave it to randomness. It's more random when these types show up and start something. Another one we're really good at is sports. So I've been trying to figure this out, and I've asked Justin to help me with this, and I got Gallup and the Clifton Foundation have some teams working on this. Another thing that as a civilization of people, we're really good at spotting running backs and point guards. So no great running backs are left behind. Well, yeah, LeBron James is here. I saw those films when he was in high school. I could spot that one. I don't follow basketball. I went, that guy right there, try to get him. Try to get that one. He's 2 feet bigger and 10 times stronger than all the other people. Try him. But so all of us can spot that. But you see how intentional that is? Then we got special schools for them, elite baseball camps, elite basketball camps, and everybody's watching for them. You know, the Americans entertain the whole world. You ever notice that? I mean, we know that because movies, songs. God, I was traveling real heavily during the Titanic thing. I mean, you could be at China, Russia, anywhere you were, that Titanic thing. I mean, it was playing live all around the world. But boy, when you can sing or play a violin, as Americans, we're right on top of it. We can really pick you out. At the Kennedy Center right now, Carol, the Life of Carole King is the Broadway plays there now. And you know, she's one of the great songwriters ever. Wrote so many songs. But her first one was in high school. And they said, how did you, #1 hit in high school, she wrote the song. They said, how did you ever learn? How did you know to write the thing? Did you hear what her answer was? She said, I didn't. She goes, I didn't. She said, it just came out of me. Just came out of me. What the hell does that mean? Well, that means that it's a God-given innate thing that's inside her that's not inside of me. But so we've got it figured out for IQ. We've got it figured out for sports. We've got it figured out for the arts. But I think as soon as we make the early identification and very intentional acceleration of the development of people with this kind of talent, entrepreneurial talent, I think America can come back. I think it's easier, and I think university people, caring Americans, for some reason, a lot of these companies come bubble, they're associated with universities. I don't know why. Might be because they connect with innovation so much. But I think as Americans, as soon as we shift our thinking and saying, of course we have to have innovation, but we don't need a building that's 300 stories high and then have a small cabin with a little bit of smoke coming out of it. That's our development of, our intentional development of entrepreneurs. But of all the things that Americans have done, I think this one would be easier. And when we do, and I mean this in a very careful way, but I think the world works better when we economically dominate it. Maybe I should say have a lot of economic influence. Markets work better, people have jobs, they don't go broke. Young men that wake up in the Middle East, it's better if they have a job rather than nothing to do, as it is in Omaha or Lincoln, Nebraska, where I'm from, or Cleveland. But I think that's all in our control, and I think it's something that it's easy for us to do. I'm going to take a few questions and stop right now. Thank you. In the back, I believe.
Hi, I'm Talia Sukal. I'm a teacher at a local private school. I teach entrepreneurship. One of the things that I'm wondering is, what are the characteristics that would help us to early identify a young person that is gifted at entrepreneurial thinking?
With extreme inventors, it tends to be what they know. They also have to have the gift, but then it's what they know. With entrepreneurs, it's more who you are, what's inside of you. The one that's a non-starter is extreme determination, and I mean extreme determination. And what we found is that, so we have a questionnaire, so we build an assessment to figure this out. But the difference is, if it's Justin and he has regular determination, I knock him down, and he has a way to deal with it. And then he can come back. That's regular determination. The rare determination that we're looking for is when I knock Justin down, and when he gets up, he's madder than he was before. But he has a governor where his where it actually increases. That's one thing. A second thing is a very unusual relationship to risk. And again, this is something very few people know. Really good entrepreneurs hate risk. They mitigate risk. They don't gamble. They don't like to go to Las Vegas. That's not what they're doing. Risk has nothing to do with it. The reason that people think they like it is because they go see them do something that anybody in their right mind wouldn't do, like bet everything they have that a company's going to work. With the help of some really good, actually Princeton academics, but we wanted people outside of our own think tank to help us. But what it is that they're in a state of mind of such high confidence that they think that kind of the standard rules of failure or don't apply to them. And so when they say, hey, you're starting this grilled cheese, I couldn't help but see that. You can tell I'm hungry, that grilled cheese thing down there. Whoever started that, you could tell that they're in the state of mind if you would have said, when will you know to stop that the idea didn't work? That wouldn't compute, because they would say, it will work, I'm never going to stop, and I'm never going to stop until it does. We've also found one that this is a very difficult to test kind of, must be a neuron configuration, but they spot disruptions every place they go. So they'll say, now how come these pizzas go like this, here, we could do this and we could have trucks go do this kind of thing. But they have quite an ability for that. They're almost always excellent, they almost always have excellent salesmanship too. Now, salesmanship, but they have some way they pull it off. Some might be a real snappy white shoes, white belt type. Another one might pull it off in a way where they teach. Dr. Gallup could pull off salesmanship. He's just one of the greatest teachers in the world. But those are 4 things that if you score highly in those, of the really rare ones that we found, a bunch of validation, fastest growing, and the data is really strong. The freaks are 5 in 1,000 that can build something of almost, let's see, I'll do the quick math on it. I'll get this over with. There's 15 million kids in high school. Here's a good question. How many Steve Jobs are in that? Somebody was talking about that here. And the answer is 5 in 1,000. So if you drop 3 zeros, there's 75,000 kids roaming the streets and hills of America that can absolutely change the future of this country and the world, and we don't know who they are. So,
we have some research questions here for you. I like these.
Okay.
I like the premise of this one.
All right.
Having all the data, which you do, having all the data, what sector would you invest in, if at all, if you were a today's entrepreneur?
Well, I think there's still no limits with technology. And that just goes so many places. I mean, I don't know where the disruptions are going to go with technology, with communication. Do you notice that Amazon is now starting to take out Walmart? But you wonder if all retailing is going to be taken down. But I wonder even about universities. And I'm deep into universities. We just dedicated a big center and all that. But you wonder, because your whole university is in that iPhone. But where technology goes, it's going to be disruption. And I don't mean to sound too American, but I'm very concerned with this. We built consistent sampling frames across 160 countries around the world and all that. And when you peek into what the world looks like right there, you really want America to do better than it's doing right now. But I hope that we can lead with a bunch of gigantic disruptions just with technology. I want to say something else. There's other things coming down that are hard to see. I think nanotechnology is going to be gigantic. Nanotechnology with medicine can so change everything. The robots, the ones that are kind of fun is that they can send a swarm of, I just saw a presentation on this, I had no idea, but we can send a swarm of mosquitoes into Syria or into, how about Moscow? That'd be a place to send us. But they can sting you and put you to sleep or whatever, kill you, whatever you need. But I think with nanotechnology, there's no limits. Another one too is a non-combustion engine. It's starting to seem kind of old school. A non-combustion engine, now that'll drop the price of oil. And supposedly, Tesla has, the thing that they can't get, and I know there's a lot of energy, we got to get figured out about the battery, but I think there's no limits there. Another one is what happens with, I saw a comedian ask Robert Rubin or somebody, maybe you're watching it too, so it's a super banker person, but he said, what is money? That's only funny to me, isn't it? But global banking is going to get pretty interesting because money really isn't anywhere. It's just stuff bouncing off satellites and moving around and who holds. But I think if we could lead with that, that would be good. If we can lead the world with education, or whatever the new university looks are going to come with, I think that's a real good one. I think there's more opportunity for us to just to shoot this country through the roof than we've ever had, but those are some.
Excellent, thank you. I like this. In keeping with your freak theme, what can normal people do to support the growth of businesses, and do you have any particular insight for people in Ohio?
Well, what we're doing at Nebraska is we created a center, and I call it a Juilliard, but it's a place, so I'm sorry to have to keep using it, but we're just really good. We're just going to crack the code there, and we want Cleveland to be the first important world-famous city that people have heard of, because people haven't heard of Lincoln, Nebraska. But so we're testing for those unusually, and again, it's a neuron configuration. To call somebody in and say, hey, we'll turn you into entrepreneurs, I think it not only doesn't work, it's cruel. But so we'll have a whole bunch of Carole Kings and Robin Williams. They were both at Juilliard. I don't think I ever met Robin Williams, but you know him as an actor. Do you really think you trained that? But so we're making a Juilliard there, so we're going to start next fall with 50 kids in there. I'm also doing my own dragnet. So I found a kid in Atlanta, poor guy. I say poor because God was much more egalitarian handing these traits out. So we so far see no difference between Hispanic, white, black, or Asian. And you might think, don't Asian. The only place where I always say you have to put an asterisk is if the person is a newly arrived immigrant, first generation immigrant, they're like 3 times more likely to start business. And then one more generation is like double, and then it goes away. But if you control for that, there's no difference. But the big one is women. And so women are grossly underperforming. Now, I don't want to sound like I blame that on women. Women should be starting companies equally at the same rate as men. So if you said, let's go into the demographics, where could we get a big boom? Get to work on women. But I think what would be good for Ohio, and we're proposing this here. Somehow Justin will figure it out. I don't do work myself. I have ideas, find people like him, and then tell him to go. That wasn't funny either, but.
You're not
but I think I think if you have a Juilliard here, but I think people need to get around it. But here's the other point. There's 2 other. If it was a 3-person band, you have to have the alpha male, alpha female as the entrepreneur. If you don't have that, it's a non-starter. But there's 2 real important support people that all of us can be. One is the operator manager, and the other one is an expert. So whether it's grilled cheese or whether it's nanotechnology flies that go land somewhere, they all need an expert chef, expert something. So then we have to be able to help those people start companies and increase the probability. When you have somebody that has this particular talent, like the lady they're 5 times more likely to start it's Moneyball. So it's just like Moneyball is for baseball, it's just Moneyball for economics.
Excellent. I want to keep on that theme of the, if you damn lies and statistics, as you noted, immigrants are, I think, currently create half the businesses in the U.S. by some measures. Is it that they self-select to come here, or is there something they're doing culturally? And as part of that, are immigrant females more represented than those domestic in the U.S.?
Mm-hmm. I'm just going to give an answer, and I think you probably know this. But you know, the number of new businesses created every year is 500,000, 400,000 close. So there's a net of 100,000. 5 years ago, those numbers crossed. So now we have more closing. So now we have 500,000 closing and 400,000 starting. And so now, so you say, oh boy, entrepreneurship, everything's going well. No, I laugh so I don't have a nervous breakdown. It's the lowest it's been. Millennials don't start companies. You'll never read that. I don't know why people, it's a clinical fact we need to deal with. Millennials don't start companies. My theory is that when you have a bunch of, so if you have a Mexican, and let's say that there's 10 of them, they're all saying, we're going to go to America, we're going to start them. Somebody has to actually, you get up the next day and you go, it wasn't a perfect day, let's do it tomorrow. Let's push it back a week. Well, you spend your whole life pushing it back, but that one that actually says, I'm going, is I'm recruiting a kid in Atlanta. He just gave me a pitch. He wants me to invest $100,000, and he makes $150 now a day and all that. And I couldn't believe sitting across the table from him. He's speed talking a whole proposal. He's so poor. He's a butt poor downtown Atlanta kid, but he's only one generation off of, his dad sat with him. And, but I think what I was seeing there, his dad made the move. And I said to him, when did you exactly say that you were going to go? And his family didn't, his friends didn't, they went, you're crazy, and he made. But I think that what you see is nature selecting. You know when there's a show, you know, where all those little buffalo come to the river, and there's a bunch of alligators swimming out in front of it, and they all stop and they go, I'm not going, but one buffalo finally jumps. That buffalo is really different than all the other ones. That's what I think's happening.
So they overcome the activation. And
I don't want Donald Trump to know this, but immigration's very good for this particular problem.
There you go.
It's a political remark, Justin. Is that okay? You can yell at me in the car.
There you go. Strong audience question. What policy could be created or removed to encourage use-based research alongside discovery-focused research?
To do what again?
What U.S. policy could be either created or removed to encourage more use-based research beyond just discovery-based research?
I don't think this is a job for our government. If you look, it's a job for cities, because you know if you're doing Six Sigma or Lean or some kind of thing, you know there's a lot of engineers I bet in the room here, but you find solutions when you look for variation. So the country is not doing well, but there's huge variation in how cities are doing. And so I wouldn't look to the federal. I think the federal government, God bless them, they're doing a whole bunch of stuff right, would just ruin this. I think city leaders need, I always use Nashville and Memphis. They're obviously in the same country, but they're in the same state too. Memphis is a colossal bust, colossal bust. Oh, they're sort of twins separated at birth too. Both of them on the river. They both have big music themes. Nashville obviously has country music. Memphis had blues and Elvis Presley and all that kind. So they're kind of twins separated at birth. Memphis is a colossal bust. Nashville, new companies are starting, and it's just wonderful. If the whole country is like Nashville, we'd be fine. Well, what's that? It's just that city leaders in Nashville got wound up, made a strategy, and made it work. This is another good thing about being old. But when I first started, I started a survey company in Nebraska. But my favorite city to go to was Detroit. I'd never seen so many new buildings, so many new cars, and all that kind of stuff. Detroit, in my lifetime, was the richest city in the world per capita. The richest city in the world. Then I'd catch my plane and go over to New York. And when I'd be in New York City, they would tell me, same thing in Miami, same thing in San Francisco, do not come out of your hotel at night. And that's why I love Detroit. And then all fortunes change. So you say, well, what does the federal government do about that? That doesn't have anything to do with the federal government. The federal government might have some years where they're great, some years when they're lousy, but all that's something that's just been coming for a while, and it all depends upon leadership of those cities. And when you have really strong city leaders, They'd rather die than lose those cities. They almost have more loyalty to cities than they do to the country. But you get my point.
Beautiful. Thank you. All right, last question. Don't shoot the moderator. What's the most pressing issue for voters in the 2016 presidential election?
Well, that's a good question because apparently we haven't gotten to it yet. But it's kind of, we've gotten to everything but that. But I'm going to say what it should be. Can I do that?
Absolutely.
But so there's a guy that actually runs the Gallup poll. And these are academics and all that. They don't want Jim Clifton in there at all, so I have to read it in the paper like you guys do. But I said to him, are we really, I keep hearing that we're more divided than we've ever been. I said, are we? And he said, we are. And he said, we can only go back 80 years. That was when Dr. Gallup, so we've been tracking this stuff for 80 years. And he said, but there were times where Democrats and Republicans would overlay with what we should do about war, or there are times overlap about what to do about jobs, or about it. And now we don't. But the one that divides Americans the most, liberal, conservative, is the role of government in our lives. And so almost every issue that you see, you can tie it back into the role government plays in our lives. But that's the central issue. I think the one that's most important is that our middle class is just going away. And if somebody doesn't figure that out, that's when things can get really ugly. I was on the University of Nebraska, nice place, but we had enormous student demonstrations. I helped break into the ROTC building, broke the glass, took the thing over. So it wasn't like a bunch of hoodlums, it was just a whole bunch of Americans like me. But students can get really crazy. We burned cities, we even burned Omaha. I think Omaha was on the cover of Time magazine. But you don't want to lose that middle class, or our very own country could get rocky. And right now, that one's going the wrong way. So the right issue, if you really care about the country, isn't all the other stuff that we're worried about. I mean, immigration's got to be right, and I don't know, what else is there? Gay marriage and all sorts of things. They don't really matter that much to our future, in just one guy's opinion, as getting our economics back on track, and especially the almighty middle class household. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim.